The courtroom smelled of old wood and broken promises. Nyla sat at the defendant's table, her back straight, her hands folded calmly in her lap. Across the aisle, Garrett whispered something to Cassidy that made her giggle. The sound echoed through the quiet room like nails on a chalkboard. Judge Whitaker adjusted his glasses. The dissolution of marriage between Garrett Mitchell and Nyla Mitchell is hereby granted. All terms of the settlement have been agreed upon and are final. Garrett's lawyer smiled. Garrett himself looked almost bored, as if this were just another appointment. Cassidy squeezed his hand, her long red nails digging into his palm. She wore the diamond bracelet he had bought with their joint credit card, the very one Nyla had paid off every month. Nyla signed the final papers without hesitation. Her signature was neat, practiced. She had been preparing for this moment. The court clerk collected the documents and handed copies to both attorneys. "You're free to go," the judge said. Nyla stood. She wore a simple black dress and heels that made her 5 feet 7 inches frame even more imposing. Her natural hair was pulled back in a sleek bun. She looked like she was heading to a business meeting rather than ending her marriage. She walked toward the exit without looking back. Not at Garrett, not at Cassidy, not at the courtroom where she had just legally ended the biggest mistake of her life. "Nyla, wait," Garrett called after her. She did not stop. Outside the courthouse, the afternoon sun blazed bright and unforgiving. Nyla descended the stone steps with measured confidence. Garrett and Cassidy followed her out, their footsteps quick and eager. "Nyla, come on," Garrett said, jogging to catch up. "We should talk about logistics, the house, the utilities, all that." Nyla reached the sidewalk and stopped. For a moment, Garrett thought she might actually engage. Cassidy stood beside him, her arm linked through his, her expression smug. "You're going to be okay, right?" Cassidy asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. "I mean, financially. Garrett said you might struggle on your own." Nyla looked at Cassidy for the first time since entering the courthouse. Her gaze was cool, almost clinical. Then she looked at Garrett. His hair was freshly cut. His suit was new, another purchase on the credit card she had always paid off. He still wore that same cocky smile he had flashed when they first met. She said nothing. A black limousine turned the corner and pulled up to the curb directly in front of her. It was sleek and expensive, with tinted windows so dark you could not see inside. The chrome detailing gleamed in the sunlight. Garrett's smile faltered. "What's this?" A driver stepped out from the front seat. He was a tall black man in his 50s, wearing a perfectly tailored charcoal suit and white gloves. He walked around the car with practiced grace and opened the rear passenger door. "Miss Hartley," he said with a slight bow. Nyla smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine, that rose from deep within. "Thank you, Raymond." She slid into the back seat without hesitation. Through the open door, Garrett caught a glimpse of cream leather interior, polished wood panels, and a bottle of champagne resting in an ice bucket. Someone was already inside, a man in an expensive suit, his face partially hidden in shadow. Raymond closed the door with a solid, final thud. He returned to the driver's seat, and the limousine pulled away from the curb smoothly, silently. Garrett stood frozen on the courthouse steps. Cassidy's mouth hung open. "Who the hell was that?" Cassidy asked. Garrett did not answer. He could not. He watched the limousine disappear down the street, his mind racing. Nyla had never mentioned knowing anyone who rode in cars like that. She had never mentioned having money. She had always been so careful with finances, always talking about budgets and savings. "Garrett," Cassidy tugged on his sleeve. "Who was that man in the car?" "I don't know," Garrett said quietly. For the first time since he had started his affair, a cold, heavy dread settled deep in his stomach. Nyla had walked away from their marriage like it was nothing. No tears, no anger, no begging. And now she was riding away in a limousine that probably cost more than his yearly salary. "Maybe it's just a friend giving her a ride," Cassidy said, but her voice was uncertain. Garrett's phone buzzed. A text from his credit card company. Payment overdue, $4,200 balance. He had been counting on Nyla to pay it off like she always did. She always handled their finances, always made sure everything was covered. "Come on," Cassidy said, pulling him toward her beat-up Honda Civic in the parking lot. "Let's go celebrate. We're finally free." But Garrett could not shake the image of Nyla sliding into that limousine like she owned it, like she belonged there, like she had been waiting for this moment all along. What did he really know about his ex-wife? And what had he just lost? Nyla sat in her grandmother's hospital room, holding the old woman's frail hand. Eleanor Hartley had lived with dignity and grace. Now, in her final hours, she wanted to make sure her granddaughter understood what was coming. "The trust fund," Eleanor whispered, her voice weak but clear. "You can access it when you turn 30. $12 million, but Nyla, you listen to me." Nyla leaned closer. "I'm listening, Grandma. Don't tell that husband of yours, not yet. I don't trust him." "Grandma, Garrett's a good man. He married you without asking about your family. He doesn't know the Hartley name means anything. That tells me he doesn't care about where you come from." Eleanor squeezed her granddaughter's hand with surprising strength. "Promise me you'll wait. See who he really is before you share this with him." Nyla promised, though at the time she thought her grandmother was being paranoid. Eleanor died that night. At the funeral, Garrett complained about taking time off work. He did not understand why Nyla needed a full week to grieve. He had never met Eleanor, always had some excuse when Nyla suggested visits. The reading of the will happened in the lawyer's office. Nyla went alone, telling Garrett it was just formalities. The lawyer, an elderly man named Mr. Ellington, laid out everything. "Your grandmother's estate is quite substantial," he said, sliding papers across his desk. "The primary asset is a trust fund. Current value, $12,400,000. You can access it now that you are 30. Nyla's hands trembled. "$12 million? Your grandmother was very wise with investments. The Hartley family made their fortune in textiles and real estate. Your grandmother preserved and grew that wealth carefully." Mr. Ellington folded his hands. "She left specific instructions. She wanted you to be independent before accessing these funds. She wanted you to know your own strength first." Nyla thought about Garrett at home, probably playing video games, completely unaware that his wife had just inherited more money than he would make in 3 lifetimes. "What should I do?" she asked. "That's entirely up to you," Mr. Ellington said. "But your grandmother also left advice. She said to invest in real estate. Property can't lie to you. It can't cheat on you. It's solid ground beneath your feet." Nyla left the lawyer's office with a certified check and a head full of thoughts. She drove home slowly, trying to process everything. $12 million. Financial freedom. The ability to do anything she wanted. She pulled into the driveway of their modest 3-bedroom house. Garrett's car was already there. She sat in her vehicle for a long moment, staring at their home. They had been married for years. They were comfortable, happy enough. Garrett worked in sales for a medical supply company. She was a corporate accountant at a mid-sized firm. They had plans to start a family soon. Inside, Garrett was on the couch with a beer, watching a basketball game. "Hey, babe," he said, without looking away from the screen. "How'd it go?" "Fine," Nyla said. "Just paperwork stuff. Your grandma leave you anything good? Maybe some jewelry you could sell?" Nyla's stomach tightened. "Just some personal items, photo albums, her wedding ring. That's it? I thought rich old ladies always had money hidden somewhere." Garrett laughed. "Guess not, huh? Nyla went to their bedroom and sat on the bed. She thought about her grandmother's warning. She thought about how Garrett had just assumed there was no funny. She thought about how quickly he had suggested selling jewelry. She opened her laptop and started researching real estate investment strategies. By midnight, she had found 3 apartment buildings for sale in the city. She hired a financial advisor and a real estate attorney, both sworn to confidentiality. She told Garrett she was working late more often. Really, she was viewing properties, meeting with contractors, learning the business. She created an LLC under her grandmother's maiden name, Hartley Holdings. All correspondence went to a P.O. box Garrett did not know about. After her grandmother's death, Nyla purchased her first apartment building, 15 units, fully rented, steady income. Garrett never knew. She kept their joint checking account normal, contributing her regular paycheck. The real money stayed separate, growing, building something Garrett could not see. At night, she lay beside her husband and wondered if her grandmother had been right to warn her. Garrett seemed fine. He was not perfect, but who was? He forgot anniversaries sometimes and did not help much around the house, but he was not cruel. He was just ordinary. Then again, Eleanor Hartley had not built a fortune by trusting ordinary men. Nyla decided to wait and watch. If Garrett was the man she thought he was, she would eventually share everything. If not, she would have options. She never imagined she would need those options so soon. Nyla noticed the changes in Garrett. He started showering the moment he got home from work, instead of collapsing on the couch like usual. He bought new cologne, something expensive she did not recognize. He joined a gym and went religiously every evening, even though he had always said working out was boring. "I just want to get healthier," he said, when she asked about the sudden fitness obsession. "We're not getting any younger," but he did not invite her to join him, and he started locking his phone. Nyla had been managing their finances for years, so she reviewed their credit card statements like always. She noticed charges at restaurants she had never been to, a florist, a hotel in the downtown district on a Tuesday afternoon when Garrett said he was at a work conference. Her hands shook as she stared at the hotel charge, $287 for a weekday afternoon. No conference would meet at that hotel. It was the kind of place people went for privacy. She wanted to be wrong. She wanted there to be an explanation. So she said nothing and paid the bill like always. But she started paying attention. Garrett's phone buzzed constantly. He would grab it quickly, read messages with a little smile, then delete them. When Nyla walked into a room, he would flip his phone face down. At night, he would take it to the bathroom when he showered. "Who keeps texting you?" she asked one evening. "Just work stuff," he said casually. "You know how it is." But Nyla did know. She worked in corporate accounting. Work emails did not make people smile like that. Work texts did not need to be hidden. She gave him chances to tell the truth. She asked about his day, his coworkers, his projects. He lied smoothly every time. The lies came so easily that Nyla realized this was not new. He had probably been lying about small things for years, and she had simply never noticed. Nyla made a decision. She called a private investigator named Calvin Hayes. He came recommended by Denise Langston, the divorce attorney Nyla had consulted when she was setting up her business, LLC. Calvin was a former police detective, now in his 60s, with gray hair and kind eyes. They met at a coffee shop far from Nyla's neighborhood. "I need to know if my husband is cheating," Nyla said quietly. Calvin did not judge. He had heard it 1,000 times before. "Give me 2 weeks. I'll find out everything." He did not need 2 weeks. He needed 5 days. Calvin called Nyla at work. "Can you meet me this afternoon? I have what you need." They met at the same coffee shop. Calvin slid a manila folder across the table. Nyla's heart pounded as she opened it. Photos. Dozens of them. Garrett and a woman with long blonde hair and too much makeup. Kissing in a parking lot, holding hands at a restaurant, entering that same hotel. 3 different visits captured on camera. Her name is Cassidy Ellis, Calvin said gently. She's a receptionist at your husband's company. They've been seeing each other. There's more? Nyla asked. Calvin slid another stack of papers across the table. These are his credit card statements for the past year. I have a contact who could access them. That bracelet she's wearing in the photos? $1,500. The perfume? $300. Lingerie purchases, dinner dates, weekend trips, all on your joint credit card. Nyla did the math in her head. Garrett had spent over $20,000 on his affair. Money she had earned and paid off every month while he bought gifts for another woman. Here's the text message logs, Calvin continued. My contact pulled them from the phone company. You'll want to read these when you're alone. Nyla took the folder home that night after Garrett left for his gym session. She sat at the kitchen table and read every message. The things they said about her made her stomach turn. Garrett called her boring, uptight, too focused on work. Cassidy called her the obstacle and the wife. They joked about how clueless Nyla was, how she had no idea what was happening right under her nose. In one message, Garrett wrote, "She'll be devastated when I leave her. But honestly, I can't wait to be free." Cassidy replied, "She'll probably beg you to stay. They always do." Nyla closed the folder. She did not cry. She did not scream. She felt something colder than anger settle in her bones. They thought she would beg. They thought she would be devastated. They thought she needed Garrett. They had no idea who she really was. Nyla opened her laptop and reviewed her real estate portfolio. 3 apartment buildings now, worth a combined $18 million. Monthly rental income, $95,000. Her trust fund had grown to $14 million through careful investments. She pulled up her bank account statements. Her personal wealth, hidden from Garrett this entire marriage, totaled $32 million. Nyla picked up her phone and called Denise Langston. "I'm ready to file," she said, "and I want him to get nothing." While Garrett continued his affair, believing Nyla was clueless, she built an empire in the shadows. Every evening when Garrett left for the gym, Nyla attended property viewings, contractor meetings, and investment consultations. She told Garrett she was working late on a big project at her accounting firm. He barely listened when she talked about work anyway. Hartley Holdings owned 5 properties, 3 apartment buildings, 1 commercial office space, and a small shopping plaza. Her property manager, a sharp woman named Simone Brooks, handled the day-to-day operations while Nyla focused on acquisitions and strategy. "You have an eye for undervalued assets," Simone told her during one of their weekly meetings. "These properties are going to triple in value over the next 5 years. Nyla smiled. "My grandmother taught me that land and buildings don't lie. They're solid, unlike some people." Simone glanced at the photo on Nyla's phone screen. Her wallpaper still showed her and Garrett from their wedding day. Nyla had told Simone about the affair. She had to tell someone, and Simone had proven trustworthy. The older woman had been through her own divorce years earlier. "When are you going to confront him?" Simone asked. "When everything is in place," Nyla said. "I won't give him a chance to hide assets or claim he deserves any of this. I need my legal protection airtight." That was when Nyla intensified her work with Denise Langston. The attorney was a powerhouse who wore bold colors and spoke with absolute confidence. "Your prenuptial agreement is your shield," Denise explained, reviewing the document Garrett had insisted they sign before marriage. "He wanted to protect his assets in case you made more money than him. Ironic, isn't it?" "Very," Nyla said. "Everything you inherited or earned separately stays separate. He gets nothing from Hartley Holdings. The house you're living in, you've been paying the mortgage from a separate account, correct?" "For recent years, yes. I diverted funds from my real estate income to cover it. Garrett thinks his paychecks are covering it, but I've been depositing his contributions into a savings account he doesn't know about. Denise grinned. That house is yours then. He'll have to move out. They spent weeks preparing. Denise gathered all the evidence of Garrett's affair, his financial irresponsibility, and his violations of their prenuptial agreement. Calvin provided additional documentation, hotel receipts, restaurant bills, even a recording of Garrett telling a coworker about his plans to divorce Nyla. Once I figure out how to keep the house. Nyla purchased her 6th property, a luxury apartment building with a penthouse unit. She had the penthouse furnished in secret, custom furniture, modern art, a kitchen with top-of-the-line appliances. It was her escape plan, ready when she needed it. Garrett noticed nothing. He was too busy with Cassidy. Nyla watched him lie to her every day. He kissed her goodbye in the morning, told her he loved her, then spent his lunch break texting his mistress. She saw everything now, every deception, every fake smile. Doesn't it hurt? Simone asked during one of their meetings. Living with him while knowing? No, Nyla said honestly. I stopped loving him the moment I read those text messages. Now he's just a problem I'm solving. Nyla's portfolio was worth $38 million. Her monthly income from rent exceeded $200,000. She had also started a charitable foundation in her grandmother's name, planning to fund educational programs for young women. Garrett came home one night bragging about a bonus at work. $5,000, baby. We should take a trip or something. Nyla smiled. That's great, honey. She had made $5,000 that afternoon in rental income alone. But she let him have his moment. I'm thinking we should start trying for a baby soon, Garrett said, sitting beside her on the couch. We're not getting any younger. Nyla's stomach turned. He was planning a future with her while sleeping with Cassidy. The audacity was almost impressive. Let's wait a bit longer, she said carefully. I want to make sure we're really ready. Sure, Garrett said, already distracted by his phone. Another text from Cassidy, no doubt. That night, Nyla lay awake beside her sleeping husband. She felt no sadness anymore, just determination. Nyla scheduled the confrontation for an evening. Everything was ready. The divorce papers prepared, her new penthouse furnished, her bank accounts separated, her evidence organized. She had given Garrett years of her life, years of loyalty, of paying bills he did not contribute to, of building a home while he tore it apart behind her back. Now she was taking back her power, and Garrett had no idea what was coming. Garrett was in the living room watching football, a beer in hand, completely relaxed. Nyla walked in and turned off the television. Hey, Garrett protested. The game's on. We need to talk, Nyla said. She placed a manila folder on the coffee table between them. Garrett's expression shifted from annoyance to confusion. What's this about? Open it. He reached for the folder slowly, as if it might bite him. Inside were the photos, him and Cassidy kissing, holding hands, entering hotels. His face went pale. Nyla, I can explain. Don't. Her voice was calm, almost detached. There's more. She pulled out the credit card statements with charges highlighted in yellow. Every gift, every dinner, every hotel room. $23,000. The text messages are in there too, she continued. All the times you called me boring. All the times you and Cassidy laughed about how clueless I was. All your plans to leave me once you figured out how to keep the house. Garrett's hands shook as he flipped through the evidence. Baby, listen, this isn't... It's exactly what it looks like. He stood up, his shock turning to anger. You had me followed? You invaded my privacy. You used our money to buy gifts for your mistress. You lied to me every single day. But sure, let's talk about privacy. Garrett ran his hands through his hair. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. Cassidy's name flashed on the screen. He ignored it. Okay, yes, I made mistakes, he said, switching tactics. But we can work through this. Marriage counseling, whatever you want. I'll end things with her right now. I want a divorce. The words hung in the air. Garrett stared at her like she had spoken a foreign language. You don't mean that, he said. I've already filed the papers. You'll be served tomorrow at work. Garrett's face turned red. You can't just… Nyla, be realistic. You can't afford this house on your own. Your job doesn't pay that well. You need me. Nyla almost laughed. Do I? Yeah, you do. Who's going to help with bills? Who's going to… He gestured around their home. You think you can maintain all this alone? You're going to struggle, and you'll come crawling back. I won't. You will, Garrett said, his voice cruel now. And I might not take you back. You're not exactly a prize, Nyla. You work all the time. You're boring as hell. Cassidy's fun. She's exciting. She actually wants to spend time with me. Then go be with her. Maybe I will. Garrett grabbed his phone and his keys. You know what? Fine. You want to do this? We'll do this. But don't come crying to me when you can't pay your rent in some crappy apartment. He stormed toward the door, then turned back. You're making a huge mistake. You'll never find anyone better than me. Nyla met his eyes. I already have. It was a lie. She was not seeing anyone. But Garrett did not need to know that. His face twisted with confusion and rage. He slammed the door on his way out. Nyla listened to his car peel out of the driveway. Then she pulled out her phone and called her moving company. I need you to come tomorrow morning. I'm relocating to my penthouse. That night, she packed her personal belongings, clothes, photos from before Garrett, her grandmother's jewelry, important documents. She left behind everything they had bought together. She did not need any of it. By dawn, the moving truck arrived. Professional movers loaded her boxes efficiently. Nyla took one last look at the house she had been paying for, while Garrett thought he was the provider. Then she locked the door and left her keys on the kitchen counter. The penthouse was on the 20th floor of her newest building, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Modern furniture, a chef's kitchen, a master suite with a bathroom bigger than most bedrooms. This was hers. Actually hers. Garrett got served with divorce papers at his office that day. According to Calvin, who still had contacts at Garrett's company, he had thrown the papers across the room and stormed into his boss's office demanding time off. He was denied. He called Nyla 73 times that day. She blocked his number. He showed up at her old address that evening, the house she had left. He pounded on the door, but she was not there. A neighbor told him she had moved out. Garrett's confusion must have been spectacular. He tried her office. Security would not let him pass the lobby. Finally, he sent an email. Nyla, please, we need to talk about the settlement. Be reasonable. We can work this out. Nyla forwarded the email to Denise without responding. He has no idea what's coming, does he? Denise said during their phone call. None, Nyla confirmed. Good, Denise said. Let's keep it that way until the court date. The settlement conference happened in Denise's office. Garrett walked in expecting a negotiation. Instead, he got a demolition. Denise's conference room was pristine. Glass table, leather chairs, walls lined with law books. Garrett sat across from Nyla with his attorney, a young guy named Brent, who looked fresh out of law school and completely overwhelmed. Let's get started, Denise said, opening a leather portfolio. My client is seeking a clean dissolution of marriage with division of assets, according to the prenuptial agreement they signed before marriage. Brent cleared his throat. My client believes the prenuptial agreement should be renegotiated. Years of marriage entitle him to… Your client is entitled to nothing, Denise interrupted smoothly. The prenuptial agreement is ironclad. It was reviewed by independent counsel before signing. Your client insisted on it, actually. She slid a document across the table, his email to Nyla. We should both protect our assets in case one of us becomes more successful. He had been quite adamant. Garrett's jaw tightened. I didn't think she'd actually use it against me. That's not how legal contracts work, Denise said. Now, let's review the assets. The marital home at 847 Birchwood Drive. That's half mine, Garrett said quickly. Denise smiled. It was not a nice smile. Actually, it's not. Nyla has been solely responsible for the mortgage payments for recent years. We have bank statements proving this. She produced another stack of papers. You believed you were contributing, but your deposits went into a separate savings account. The mortgage was paid from Nyla's personal funds. Garrett's face went red. That's not possible. I watched her pay the bills. You watched her manage finances, Denise corrected. You never actually verified where the money came from. The house is Nyla's separate property. You have 30 days to vacate. 30 days? Where am I supposed to go? That's not our concern, Denise said. Moving on. Joint credit card debt totaling $23,000. Brent jumped in, looking relieved. That should be split equally. Normally, yes, Denise agreed. However, we have documented that Mr. Mitchell accrued this debt through an extramarital affair. Hotel rooms, gifts, dinners, all for his mistress, Cassidy Ellis. She slid photos across the table. Adultery negates his claim to equal debt division. Nyla has already paid off these cards. Mr. Mitchell will reimburse her the full amount, $23,000. Garrett stood up. This is insane. You can't. Sit down, Mr. Mitchell, Denise said calmly. We're not finished. Brent put a hand on Garrett's arm, urging him back into his seat. Garrett sat, his face a mixture of rage and panic. Bank accounts, Denise continued. Nyla will retain her personal accounts. The joint checking account currently holding $1,200 will be split equally. That's it? Garrett said. $600? You've been spending considerably more than you've been earning, Denise noted. Nyla covered the shortfall. You're fortunate she is not seeking reimbursement for years of financial support. Garrett looked at Nyla for the first time since entering the room. You're really doing this? You're going to leave me with nothing? Nyla's expression did not change. You left yourself with nothing. Your retirement account remains yours, Denise told Garrett. Approximately $41,000. Nyla has no claim to it. What about her retirement? Garrett demanded. Nyla's retirement accounts are her separate property established before the marriage. The prenuptial agreement is clear on this. Garrett turned to Brent desperately. Do something. Brent looked at his notes, then at the prenuptial agreement, then at Denise's evidence. Mr. Mitchell, she's right. The agreement you signed protects her separate assets. And the affair, it compromises your position significantly. This is because I cheated? One mistake and she gets everything. 8 months isn't a mistake, Nyla said quietly. It's a choice you made every single day. Garrett's phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Cassidy calling again. He declined the call. There's one more thing, Denise said. Nyla is willing to waive the $23,000 debt reimbursement on one condition. Garrett leaned forward, grasping at hope. What condition? You sign these papers today and never contact Nyla again. No calls, no texts, no emails, no showing up at her home or workplace. A clean break. And if I don't agree, then we go to court, where all of this becomes public record, Denise said. Your employer will learn you violated company policy by having an affair with a subordinate. Cassidy is a receptionist. You're in management. That's a fireable offense. Your friends and family will learn the details of your infidelity, and you'll still end up with the same settlement, but you'll owe the $23,000 plus legal fees. Brent whispered something to Garrett. Garrett closed his eyes, defeated. Where do I sign? He asked. Denise slid the divorce decree across the table. Garrett signed with shaking hands. Nyla signed her name next to his. Calm, steady, final. The court will finalize this, Denise said. Mr. Mitchell, you have 30 days to vacate the property. Nyla will not be present during your move. Leave your keys on the kitchen counter when you're done. Garrett stood without another word and walked out. Brent gathered his papers and followed, apologizing to Denise for wasting her time. When they were gone, Denise turned to Nyla. "How do you feel?" "Free," Nyla said, and she meant it. Nyla sat in a conference room at the Chicago Hilton, surrounded by real estate developers and investors. The National Commercial Real Estate Summit was the biggest industry event of the year, and Hartley Holdings had been invited to present. Nyla stood at the podium, a slideshow behind her showing her portfolio, 8 properties now, worth $45 million combined. She wore a navy blue suit, her natural hair in elegant locks, her confidence radiating through the room. "Affordable housing isn't just good ethics," she told the audience. "It's good business. The demand is there, the need is there, and investors who recognize this early will dominate the market for decades." The applause was genuine. After her presentation, at least a dozen people approached her with business cards and partnership proposals. One of them was Julian Whitmore. He was tall, maybe 6 feet 3 inches, with dark brown skin, a closely trimmed beard touched with gray, and eyes that actually focused when he listened. He wore an expensive suit, but no wedding ring. "Impressive presentation," he said, extending his hand. Julian Whitmore, CEO of Whitmore Development Group. Nyla knew the name. Whitmore Development was a national firm worth billions, specializing in large-scale mixed-use properties. "Thank you," she said, shaking his hand. "I'm familiar with your work. The Renaissance Plaza in Atlanta is stunning. You've been there. I studied it. The way you integrated affordable units with luxury condos without segregating them. Brilliant." Julian smiled. "Most people focus on the luxury side. You're the first person at this conference who mentioned the affordable units." They talked for 20 minutes, discussing zoning challenges, financing structures, and community impact. Nyla found herself relaxed, genuinely engaged. Julian was not trying to impress her or compete with her. He asked real questions and listened to her answers. "Have you thought about expanding beyond residential?" he asked. "I'm looking at commercial properties," Nyla admitted. "But my focus is creating stable communities. Residential gives me that foundation." "Smart," Julian said. "Would you be interested in consulting on a project I'm developing? Mixed-use property in Detroit. I could use someone with your perspective." "Consulting or partnership?" "Partnership," Julian said without hesitation. "I don't need a consultant. I need a partner who actually cares about the communities we're building in." Nyla considered it. "Send me the details. I'll review them." They exchanged contact information. As Nyla walked away, Simone appeared at her side, grinning. "Was that Julian Whitmore?" "Yes." "The Julian Whitmore? Billionaire developer? The man who's been on the cover of Forbes 3 times? "I don't read Forbes," Nyla said dryly. "Well, he was definitely interested. And I don't just mean in business." "Simone, please." But over the next few weeks, Nyla found herself communicating with Julian regularly. He sent the Detroit project details, a $200 million development with residential, retail, and community spaces. The numbers were solid. The mission aligned with hers. They scheduled calls to discuss it. Those calls often ran long, veering from business into personal territory. Nyla learned Julian was divorced and had been for years. He had 2 daughters in college. He had built his company from nothing, starting with a single apartment building 30 years ago. "Sounds familiar," Nyla said during one call. "Your story?" Julian asked. "My grandmother started small too. She taught me that you don't need to start with millions. You just need to start." "Your ex-husband," Julian said carefully. "Did he support your business?" Nyla laughed, a bitter sound. "He didn't know about it. He thought I was just an accountant living paycheck to paycheck." "How is that possible?" "I kept it separate. Turned out to be a wise decision. When he decided to cheat on me with a receptionist, his loss. Julian said quietly. I mean that. Something in his tone made Nyla's heart skip. She changed the subject back to the Detroit project. But Julian kept finding reasons to call. He sent her articles he thought she would find interesting. He asked her opinion on deals he was considering. And eventually, he asked if she would have dinner with him when he was in town next month. Business dinner? Nyla asked. Does it have to be? Julian replied. Nyla smiled, sitting alone in her penthouse office. No, it doesn't have to be. They had dinner at a quiet Italian restaurant. Julian wore jeans and a sweater. No suit. No pretense. Nyla wore a simple black dress. They talked for 3 hours about everything except real estate. Julian told her about his daughters, Jada and Talia. How proud he was that they had both chosen careers in social work instead of following him into development. How hard divorce had been, but how necessary. My ex-wife wanted me to stay small, he explained. She was uncomfortable with success. Every time the company grew, she'd say I was changing, becoming someone she didn't recognize. Eventually, I realized she didn't want me to grow. She wanted me to stay the same person I was at 25 or tough. That's not fair, Nyla said. No. But leaving wasn't easy. I still felt guilty for years. Do you now? No, Julian said. Now I'm grateful. I get to build something meaningful. I get to be the father my daughters deserve. And I get to have dinners like this with incredible women who actually understand ambition. Nyla felt her cheeks warm. That's very smooth. I mean it, Julian said, meeting her eyes. You're remarkable, Nyla. Not just what you've built, though that's impressive as hell, but who you are. The way you talk about your mission, your grandmother, your community. That's rare. They left the restaurant and walked through the city, talking until midnight. When Julian walked Nyla to her car, he did not try to kiss her. He just smiled and said, "Can we do this again?" "Yes," Nyla said. "We can." Over the next months, they built something real. Julian flew in every few weeks. Nyla visited him in Detroit for the project launch. They were careful, taking things slow, both having been burned before. But Nyla found herself thinking about him when he was not around. She found herself smiling when his name appeared on her phone. She found herself imagining a future that looked nothing like her past. And for the first time since her divorce, she felt genuinely happy. Garrett's life fell apart in stages, like a building collapsing floor by floor. The first blow came when he moved in with Cassidy. He had expected sympathy, romance, a fresh start. Instead, he got a cramped one-bedroom apartment in a complex that smelled like old carpet and disappointment. "This is temporary," he told Cassidy, carrying boxes up 3 flights of stairs. "Once I get back on my feet, we'll get somewhere nicer." Cassidy looked around the apartment with barely concealed disgust. "How long is temporary? I don't know. A few months, maybe?" "A few months?" Her voice rose. "Garrett, I didn't leave my apartment to move into this dump." "You didn't leave anything," Garrett snapped. "Your landlord evicted you for late rent. That's why you're here." The first fight happened that night, and the second. And by the end of the week, they had established a pattern of constant bickering. The second blow came at work. Garrett's boss, a stern woman named Ms. Reynolds, called him into her office. "We need to discuss your relationship with Cassidy Ellis," Ms. Reynolds said, her expression neutral, but her tone ice cold. Garrett's stomach dropped. "What about it? You're in management. She's a subordinate. That's a violation of company policy regarding workplace relationships." We weren't," Garrett stammered. Ms. Reynolds slid a printed email across her desk. It was from Cassidy to a coworker. "Garrett and I are going to that new restaurant downtown tonight. Don't tell anyone, LOL." Cassidy forwarded this to her personal email, which she accessed on a company computer. Ms. Reynolds explained. "IT flagged it during a routine audit. Further investigation revealed dozens of similar emails, text messages sent during work hours, and security footage of you two in the parking garage. Ms. Reynolds, I can explain. You violated policy, Mr. Mitchell. You used company time and resources to conduct a personal affair. That's grounds for immediate termination. You're firing me? No, Ms. Reynolds said. But you're being demoted. You'll return to a sales associate position with a 40% pay cut. Consider it mercy. Garrett left her office in shock. His salary dropped from $75,000 to $45,000 in one conversation. When he told Cassidy that night, she stared at him like he had grown a second head. $45,000? That's it. It's temporary until I find something better. When? I don't know, Cassidy. I'm doing my best. Your best sucks, she said, grabbing her purse. I'm going out. She went out a lot after that. Sometimes she came home smelling like cologne that was not Garrett's. He did not ask. He was afraid of the answer. The third blow came when Garrett drove past Nyla's old apartment building, the one she had moved into after leaving their house. He had looked up her address in the divorce papers. He wanted to see where she was living, wanted to confirm she was struggling like he had predicted. Instead, he saw her name on a bronze placard near the entrance. Hartley Holdings, LLC, property owner. Garrett parked and stared at that placard. She owned the building. His ex-wife owned an entire apartment building. He went home and searched Hartley Holdings online. The results made his blood run cold. News articles, business profiles, a website showing 8 properties, apartment buildings, commercial spaces, a shopping plaza. The company's stated value, $42 million. Garrett's hands shook as he clicked through photos of Nyla at industry conferences, cutting ribbons at grand openings, shaking hands with city officials. In every photo, she looked powerful, confident, successful. She had been a millionaire their entire marriage. She had built a real estate empire while he thought she was just working late at her accounting job. What are you looking at? Cassidy asked, peering over his shoulder. My ex-wife apparently owns a real estate company worth millions. Cassidy was quiet for a long moment. Then, and you cheated on her with me? I didn't know. You're an idiot, Cassidy said flatly. You had a millionaire wife and you threw it away for me? A receptionist making $32,000 a year? I loved you. No, Cassidy said, her voice cold. You loved the idea of me. You loved that I made you feel important. But guess what? You're not important, Garrett. You're a middle-aged guy with a mediocre job and no money. And I'm done. She started packing that night. By morning, she was gone. She had left a note. Marcus from accounting has his own place and a decent car. Good luck. Garrett sat alone in his shabby apartment, surrounded by unpaid bills and broken dreams. He had lost everything: his wife, his home, his job status, his girlfriend. All because he thought he deserved better than Nyla. Hibautoa pulled out his phone and scrolled to her blocked number. He had saved it under a different contact name to get around the block. His fingers hovered over the call button. What would he say? I'm sorry. I made a mistake. Please take me back. He knew what she would say. Nothing. She would hang up. Or worse, she would laugh. Garrett put the phone down. He could not call her. He had burned that bridge and danced on the ashes. All he could do now was live with the consequences of his choices and watch from a distance as his ex-wife became everything he had never believed she could be. Nyla stood on a stage in front of 200 people, investors, community leaders, journalists, and announced the public launch of Hartley Holdings. The event took place in the ballroom of the Westwood Hotel, one of the city's most prestigious venues. Screens behind Nyla displayed images of her properties, community impact statistics, and her grandmother's photo, Eleanor Hartley, the woman who had started it all. My grandmother taught me that wealth isn't just about money, Nyla said into the microphone. It's about what you build, who you help, and what you leave behind. Hartley Holdings isn't just a real estate company. It's a legacy. She detailed her plans. 10 new affordable housing developments, partnerships with local schools to provide financial literacy programs, and a scholarship fund for young women pursuing careers in business and real estate. We're committing $50 million to these initiatives. The room erupted in applause. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled notes. After the presentation, Nyla did interviews with 3 major business publications. She talked about her grandmother, her vision, and her strategy. She did not mention Garrett once. He was not part of her story anymore. Julian was there, standing at the back of the room, watching with obvious pride. When the reporters finally left her alone, he approached with a champagne flute. "You were incredible," he said, handing her the glass. "I was terrified," Nyla admitted. "Didn't show. You looked like you've been doing this your whole life." "Maybe I have," Nyla said. "I just didn't know it yet." They clinked glasses. Around them, investors and community leaders mingled, networking, making deals. Simone was in her element, schmoozing with potential partners. Denise Langston was there too, having invested in Hartley Holdings herself. "This is your moment," Julian said quietly. "How does it feel?" "Like I'm finally exactly where I'm supposed to be." The launch made waves. By the end of the week, Nyla's face was on the cover of Regional Business magazine, with the headline, "The Hidden Millionaire: How One Woman Built a Real Estate Empire in Secret." The article told her story, or the parts she chose to share. Her grandmother's legacy, her strategic investments, her vision for affordable housing. The writer called her a force of nature in designer heels. Garrett saw the magazine at a newsstand. He was walking home from his sales job, exhausted and broke, when the cover caught his eye. Nyla's face, confident and beautiful, stared out at him. He bought the magazine and read it on a bench outside a coffee shop he could not afford to enter. Every word was a knife. When asked about her personal life, Ms. Hartley, who has reverted to her maiden name, spoke warmly about her late grandmother, but declined to discuss her recent divorce. "That chapter is closed," she said. "I'm focused on building something that matters." The article mentioned her partnership with Whitmore Development Group. It showed photos of Nyla and Julian at the Detroit project groundbreaking, standing close, both smiling. Garrett's new girlfriend, a cashier at a grocery store where he shopped, walked by and saw him reading. "Isn't that your ex-wife?" she asked. "Yeah," Garrett said numbly. "She's really successful." "What does she do?" "She owns a real estate empire worth $50 million. His girlfriend stared at him. "And you divorced her?" "She divorced me." "Why?" Garrett could not answer that. He could not admit he had cheated, that he had thrown away the best thing in his life for someone who had left him the moment his money dried up. "It's complicated," he finally said. His girlfriend shrugged and kept walking. Garrett sat on that bench for another hour, reading the article over and over, torturing himself with what he had lost. Nyla never thought about Garrett anymore. She had no idea he had seen the magazine, or that he spent his nights scrolling through news articles about Hartley Holdings, watching his ex-wife's success from a distance. She was too busy actually living, building, growing, creating something bigger than revenge, bigger than anger, bigger than anything Garrett had ever imagined she could build. And in the quiet moments, when she and Julian talked late into the night about their next project or their dreams for the future, Nyla realized something profound. The best revenge really was living well. She had won, not because Garrett had lost, but because she had found herself. Nyla received an invitation to the annual Youth Education Gala, the city's most prestigious charity event. 500 guests, black tie code, and an audience full of the region's most influential people. Hartley Holdings had been asked to be a presenting sponsor. Nyla would give a speech about her new initiative, building educational centers in underserved neighborhoods. She wore a custom gown, deep emerald green with delicate beading that caught the light when she moved. Her locks were styled in an elegant updo. Diamond earrings, her grandmother's, sparkled at her ears. Julian arrived at her penthouse to pick her up. He wore a classic black tuxedo and could not take his eyes off her. "You look stunning," he said. "You clean up pretty well yourself," Nyla teased. They had been officially together for months now, taking their time, building something real. His daughters had visited, and Nyla had taken them to brunch. Jada and Talia were smart, kind young women who had welcomed Nyla warmly. No pressure, no expectations, just genuine connection. The gala was held at the Grand Ballroom downtown. Chandeliers glittered overhead. A string quartet played classical music. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. Nyla mingled with donors, city council members, and fellow business leaders. She had become comfortable in these spaces, not because she was trying to fit in, but because she belonged here. What she did not know was that Garrett was there too. After losing his sales job, Garrett had taken work wherever he could find it. Tonight, he was part of the catering staff, a server carrying trays of champagne through the crowd, invisible to the wealthy guests. He had cut his hair shorter, trying to look professional. His white server's jacket was crisp but cheap. He had gained weight from stress and poor eating habits. At 35, he looked 45. Garrett recognized several people from his old life, colleagues who had moved up while he had crashed down. They did not recognize him in his server's uniform. He was part of the background now. Then he saw Nyla. She stood near the stage talking with the mayor. Even from across the room, she was radiant, confident, happy. Nothing like the woman he had left in their living room, except she had never cried. He had imagined she would, but she never had. Beside her stood a tall man in an expensive tuxedo. Garrett recognized him from the magazine article. Julian Whitmore, billionaire developer. The man put his hand on the small of Nyla's back, a gesture so natural and comfortable, it was clear they were together. Garrett's hand shook. Champagne glasses rattled on his tray. "Careful," his supervisor hissed, walking past. Garrett steadied himself and moved through the crowd, serving drinks, trying not to look at Nyla. But he could not help it. She was magnetic. The program began. Nyla was introduced as the keynote speaker. She walked onto the stage to enthusiastic applause, confident and poised. "Good evening," she said into the microphone, her voice clear and strong. "I made a promise to myself and to my late grandmother. I promised to build something that mattered, not just financially successful, but meaningful, something that would change lives." Garrett stood in the service area, watching from the shadows. "Tonight, I'm honored to announce Hartley Holdings' largest commitment yet, a $50 million investment in educational centers across our city. These centers will provide after-school programs, college prep courses, financial literacy training, and career counseling, all completely free to students who need them most." The crowd erupted in applause. People stood. Nyla smiled, gracious and humble. "Education changed my life," she continued. "My grandmother, Eleanor Hartley, made sure I had opportunities she never had. She taught me that wealth is a responsibility. We don't just build buildings. We build futures." More applause. Garrett felt sick. Nyla was pledging $50 million while he was serving champagne for $15 an hour. After her speech, Nyla returned to her seat. Julian kissed her cheek, proud. They held hands under the table. Garrett continued serving. He moved through the crowd like a ghost, offering champagne to people who did not see him. At one point, he had to refill glasses at the table next to Nyla's. He was maybe 10 feet away. That was perfect, Julian was saying. The foundation is going to be incredible. I hope so, Nyla said. My grandmother would be proud. She would be, Julian agreed. And for what it's worth, I'm proud too. What you're building, it's remarkable. Nyla squeezed his hand. We're building it together now. Garrett moved away before they could notice him. He spent the rest of the evening avoiding that section of the ballroom. When the gala ended, guests filed out slowly. Garrett and the other servers began clearing tables. He was collecting empty glasses when he heard her voice behind him. Excuse me. Garrett turned. Nyla stood there, elegant in her emerald gown, looking directly at him. His mouth went dry. Nyla, I think you dropped this, she said, holding out a $20 bill. Garrett looked at the money, confused. He had not dropped anything. It's a tip, Nyla said quietly, for good service. Their eyes met. Garrett searched her face for anger, for satisfaction, for anything. But Nyla's expression was neutral, not cruel, not kind, just done. She placed the 20 on his tray and walked away. Julian waited for her by the door, holding her coat. They left together, disappearing into the night. Garrett stood holding the tray, the $20 bill feeling like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She had recognized him. She had known exactly who he was, and she had treated him the same way he had treated her during their divorce. Like he was nothing. Like he did not matter enough to hate. That hurt worse than anything else possibly could. Garrett finished his shift and walked home to his studio apartment. He passed a newsstand and saw the latest issue of Business Monthly. Nyla's face was on the cover again. Hartley Holdings CEO pledges $50 million to education. He kept walking. There was nothing else he could do. Meanwhile, Nyla and Julian arrived at her penthouse. She kicked off her heels and sank onto the couch with a satisfied sigh. You were amazing tonight, Julian said, sitting beside her. Thank you for being there, Nyla said. It means everything. Nowhere else I'd rather be. He paused. Did you know your ex-husband was working that event? Nyla nodded. I saw him early in the evening. Calvin still keeps tabs on him occasionally. He lost another job. How do you feel about that? Nyla considered the question. I feel free, she said finally. He's not my problem anymore. He's not my responsibility. Choices. I made mine. No regrets. Only that I didn't leave sooner. Nyla smiled. But then again, if I had, I might not have built all this. I might not have met you. Julian pulled her close. Everything happens for a reason. Maybe. Or maybe we just make the best of what happens to us. They sat in comfortable silence, looking out at the city lights below. Nyla thought about her grandmother, about the trust fund, about the empire she had built from pain and determination. She thought about Garrett serving champagne in the background while she pledged $50 million to change lives. She had won. Completely. Totally. Absolutely won. Not because Garrett had lost, but because she had become someone who did not need revenge. Someone who had turned betrayal into purpose. Someone who had built a legacy that would outlast any marriage. Nyla fell asleep that night in Julian's arms, in her penthouse that she owned, in a life she had created entirely on her own terms. And in that moment she realized the truth. The best revenge was not making Garrett suffer. The best revenge was forgetting he had ever mattered at all.